We're going to go to Bill Brinkerhoff and Kathy Sample, who most of you know through their business, Argus Farm Stop. I knew them before when they were working in the biotech field, and also Kathy was traveling all over the world as an international business development person. So Bill and Kathy, want to take it away?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. And thanks, Rob, for providing this community interaction point on Fridays. I think we're all craving, community and connection. So this is really appreciated. So we can just take you through a thumbnail sketch of what we did at Argus just to kind of adapt to the COVID situation. And maybe we'll just divide it up into, what happened in the first week, like the second week and the third week, because what happened over that time is our business went up by a factor of 3. Like the demand for local food was crazy. The farmers markets decided that it was not safe to operate. So, we kind of became the only place easily to buy local food outside of directly from farms, which a lot of people do. But at the same time, none of our traditional methods of being able to fulfill that demand were viable. And I think we talked about, I think the first week we had a customer who's 84 years old, a guy that we really like, Richard Garner, who came in and said, he had a mask on at that point. This was around March 15th. And he said, this is my last stop in public before I quarantine, because I'm smart and I know this thing's coming for people like me. And I'm provisioning up, and is there any way you guys can drop groceries off, next week or the week after? And we said, yeah, we certainly could do that. We had a little nascent online platform that we'd been using to supply restaurants, and we thought we could use that. But it was still, total business as normal that week. And we decided, instead of just having produce and a few things for restaurants online, it would be good to put up some milk and some coffee and some bread. So we put up a provision part of our website, and we tried to shop the same way that Instacart shops, where when we get orders, our staff would just go out and fill them from the inventory in the store. And then we would call the customer when it was ready, and we would settle up on the final amount and take their credit card information. And it quickly, within days, like none of those operational approaches worked. Like to give you a sense of the volume, in the first week in March, we had about 15 online customers, and 3 of them placed orders. So we were pretty happy in early March with 3 orders. And now just fast forward to today, there's 3,000 customers online, and we're running 2 full-time shifts at the Packard store, just packing online orders. And we've closed the Packard store because you can't really pack orders like in an Instacart manner and then try to also have customers in the store. And so we kind of had to divide up the business into two approaches. But I think, back to that first week, it was just, we thought we were taking like an aggressive move to expand the online offering, and it was totally inadequate. And then we, would take the next thing that we thought was pretty forward thinking, and it was totally inadequate. And then that just repeated every 2 to 3 days over the next 45 days as we, had to hire staff and expand refrigeration and figure out, like, how do you run an online business? So it's totally different than like making a nice retail environment. So it's been a dramatic kind of a change for the way Argus works. But we've been, I think, super appreciative as we've gone through, I guess the first week of the operational stuff over that time, and figuring out how to keep customers safe and our staff safe, and to work in pods as opposed to having people. We used to cross fertilize and have people work across both locations, to have the culture of Argus kind of be broadly disseminated across, all the stores. And we had to kind of pull that back and have pods, so that if one person got sick, it wouldn't, take out the entire operation. And I think we're happy to say, as we look back, none of our staff, we have 50 staff now, none have had COVID. We're appreciative of that. And some have self-selected out for family reasons to not work in a retail environment, which we totally appreciate. And we've had a few people quarantine for safety reasons, and then come back to work after the quarantine period. So I'd say it's a short version, I guess, of our evolution there. I don't know, what did I miss, Kath?
Well, we do. So right now we do about I think yesterday we did almost 200 pickups and deliveries. And we had to go rent a delivery van and then figure out which on our staff would be able to drive that van. And then now we've got this fantastic thing with the U of M where they've actually leased us a dining vehicle because they're not using it. And the U of M, having relationships within the U has been like super helpful for us.
Steve
So,
Mangan has been really helpful.
yeah, the guy. So we've just called in a lot of favors, and if you drive by the Packard store right now, you'll see it looks it looks terrible. There's walk-in coolers all over the place, but it's what it is now. So we're now trying to figure out how do you disassemble this and move on to the next phase of COVID. So,
Kathy, can you comment on how you are planning, or if that's just a ridiculous term at this point, or what is the next phase?
well, so it is planning. So what we're going to do is we're listening to staff and we're listening to customers for what the next thing should be. So we've had requests from both to open some type of caffeine service. So, you know, because this is like really important. So we're going to do an outside pickup coffee thing to start. But we also know that we need to continue this online ordering because it's going to stay. There are people who have discovered, oh, I can just shop for local groceries online. Like I can actually take stuff and get it from my local farms. And that's a really new thing for them, but it's going to stay. So we're going to probably have to have a different location that does pack, delivery, and pickup. And you can't do it in the same site as a retail location. So that's going to be the next phase of Bill and I are probably going to be driving around looking for another abandoned building is what it boils down to.
Yeah, our long-term planning horizon is now 7 days out. So we're, yeah.
So what is it? What do your days look like, Bill and Kathy?
Well, in the beginning, you know, it was pretty traumatic for staff, and we were in the store long hours every day trying to sort through this. And you know, hats off to our staff as we kind of navigated that. And I think they were anxious for us to recede from daily operations. And after, you know, 5 or 6 weeks, we've kind of, you know, handed back a lot of the batons. One of the big, you know, tricks, it's not an exciting thing, but we spend a fair amount of time sorting out the meat, you know, from local, you know, farmers, because that's a challenging thing to sell online because you have to know the price in advance. And so anyways, we've had to realign that, and we've always been kind of interested in that part of the local food economy coming alive. So we even yesterday, we were there helping out on that. But in general, it's touching base with each store each day. I think, and then
making sure that everybody feels like they have what they need. Yesterday was a crazy pack ship day, and we knew it, so we made sure we brought them lunch and, you know, just kind of picked up, did dishes. Like you kind of are there in the background helping, but and we're doing like the next 7-day planning stuff, but they're doing the day-to-day refinement and efficiency oriented things.
So Kathy and Bill, I have to reflect back about 5 years when you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do with your life, and you came up with the idea of I remember we were sitting in my office and you were kicking around things, and I'm sure this was part of your planning 5 years ago, anticipating how you would be in center of so if you knew then what you knew now, what would you have been thinking?
I think we had much more modest expectations, I guess. We thought it would be I think if it was as busy as we are now, we probably would not have made a jump into it. We would have been terrified. But we've kind of done the, you know, got into it and gone up inch by inch. But I'd say it's,
I think it's exhilarating.
Yeah.
I wouldn't shy back from it. Now that I know what I know now, I would say, yeah, it's more exciting than probably what I would have been doing sitting on a plane going back and forth to China or something, which I wouldn't be doing now.
You wouldn't have been doing that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And are you two still married and living together?
Yeah, look, this is not a fake wall. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If people have questions for Kathy and Bill or anybody else, please post them, and we'll come back. right now we're going to move to our next speaker. I forget who I said next, but I'm going to call on Ed Davidson. Ed, are you there? Okay, we lost Ed, or we got Ed here. Oh, there you are. Okay, Ed Davidson, I've known since the 70s, and he started back in the early 70s, a little Army surplus store. I think that was the first thing, and it's grown now. He has a very major store, employs a lot of people at its peak. Ed, can you talk a little bit about your perspectives on what's been happening in the last few months at Bivouac?
Okay. Unlike my predecessors, we've gone down 3 times being in retail. We've always had an online presence. It's never been that large of a business. We've also delivered for years in a 5-mile radius. Certainly that business has picked up, but it's still not enough to carry the business. We're still a brick and mortar store. So, we're trying to increase the online presence delivery, but I don't anticipate it doing that much more going forward. Certainly when the shoppers come out, it'll probably go back down again. But what we do, it's almost every couple days, we're making new plans based on the data we have. And it's planning from our perspective. Unlike Argus, you get merchandise, you order daily or weekly. My merchandise has a 6-month lead time. So it takes a lot of planning, and at this point in time, I have to decide what I'm going to do with all the merchandise that I ordered for fall, because I'm certainly not going to need it all. If the university cuts their schedule down, there's probably not going to be football. So that necessitates all sorts of order cuts and adjustments. But my advice to people is, if you're planning, include others who your planning affects to get their opinion. It's really communication and salesmanship with the planning. And you might find out that when I call, for example, the North Face and say I'm going to have, I'm letting them know in advance I'm probably going to have to cut orders. And I learned that they're going to have to cut orders because some of their products are made in China and they're not going to have them anyway. So the communication amongst the people that your planning is affecting is important, and they could be helpful and insightful. And one thing I've noticed from talking to other merchants and other people in business, restaurants, the country has been in a growth spurt for decades and decades. Yes, there's been a few blips, but as a result, no one has put away money for a what-if fund, a rainy day fund. That's kind of left people's thought process, and that's probably what's hurting most people. And what I have done is, at the beginning, I did put away money in a what-if fund. And then as the business matured and I had a line of credit at the bank, I was sure that I never leveraged completely and always had that line of credit open if there was an emergency. And that's been helpful, because cash flow is really what is keeping people going. And I've heard more and more stories of people out of cash. And it, unfortunately, turns out to be poor planning, because a what-if fund or escrowing money should be part of the mindset of small businesses who don't have access to capital.
So Ed, you had a quote you shared with me about planning from one of our former presidents. Could you share that? I thought that was perfect.
Yeah. Eisenhower said, when I go into battle, plans are worthless. But basically, before you go in, it's planning, planning, planning is absolutely incredibly important. And I find that true, here. I mean, I make plans on Monday. By Friday, they might change based on information.
So what are your plans now? I mean, how are you thinking about ordering, about your staffing? If you had to decide today what's going to be happening in, let's say August, what would it be?
Well, first is, unfortunately, we're going to have to cut expenses, and the biggest expense that one is able to cut is, unfortunately, wages. I've not had too much trouble with that, meaning that I have a lot of part-time students who left anyway. But that's the basic expense, and the one you have the most ability to control. Now, as far as planning for inventory, at this point, I've just communicated with all my vendors, let them know that I have to do it because there's going to be no football and a shorter academic season, and my sales are going to go down dramatically from last year, so that they're involved, they're aware, and there's no surprises. But in many cases, they also said, well, before you cut anything, call us because we're going to be cutting things because the factories in China aren't fully up. And, they're totally involved. And the other factor is I needed to know from them at what point I have to make final decisions that affect them. And they're very willing to work. It's the communication that's really important. And that's in the communication business, right?
Today, as I'm getting my summer shirts ordered, and I don't want to go to Amazon, I want to buy local, but I don't want to go in the store. How can I shop with you?
Well, as I said, we have delivery in a 5-mile radius.
How do I order?
Go to the website.
Okay.
We have a website, or we can just, if you were out the 5-mile limit, we would ship no different than Amazon.
Could we call you, or are your phones down at this point?
You could call, but if it's easier for you to do that, call. But we prefer the website in the sense you'll see what inventory we have in stock, and you'll be able to pay for it over the internet.
And how do you get the goods out to people? Do you mail it, or are you?
We ship it. Yeah. Yeah, like no different than Amazon. We've been doing it for years. It's just not a major part of our business.
How do you feel about your website now that it's done? Are you happy with what you did, or do you wish we had done more?
Obviously, I wish I had done more. And the other option you have is we have curbside. If you didn't want delivery, you could do curbside.
Okay. And there is a parking space now on State Street for the first time in 30 years, so that's good too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Ed. Well, I'm sure questions are coming in. I'm going to switch over, but I would encourage everybody to do that, to shop at Bivouac, shop local, even though it may not be quite as easy as hitting that Amazon Prime, just swipe here. I mean, it's pretty damn easy to do that, just too easy. But let's support our local merchants. So I'm going to go next to Rich Sheridan. Rich has been in business for about 20 some years. Rich, is that about right? Where is Rich?
There we go. Yeah, it'll be 19 next month, Rob.
Okay. I remember you and I were launching our businesses around the same time over on Carytown area. We spent a lot of time in the coffee shops there.
Yeah, we launched in the debris of the .com bubble burst. That seems so quaint now.
Rich, can you give us an idea just of your growth in that 20 years and then what happened beginning in March?
Sure. It's funny. I'm back home now, and the business literally was formulated on this deck that I'm sitting on here. Our first office was in our basement, which I do a lot of work from now. So there's a bit of a coming home feeling. Then we moved to a little storefront on Carytown, on 4th Avenue, Carytown area that you probably remember, where Mott and Bailey bookstore is, right next door to People's Food Co-op and Cafe Verde. And then up to the top floor of Carytown Market and Shops, and then down to Liberty Square. So each time we moved, we tripled the space. So that's 4 moves. We went from, 1,000 square feet in my basement to now we're at about 25,000 square feet in Liberty Square. And it's a big, lifeless, dark space right now because we're all working from home. And, I see a lot of friends on the screen here, so I don't think I need to over-explain Menlo, but there is no question that we are, if you wanted to design both a space, a culture, a process, and a business model that was going to spread COVID, we got it. 2 people sitting shoulder to shoulder, sharing a keyboard and a mouse, working in a big open room. We switch the pairs every 5 days. We have thousands of people who get on airplanes and come and spend 1 to 5 days in our space with us, learning about how we do everything we do. Everybody's out in the big open room. We once a day, just to make sure we pass all the viruses around we can, we stand in a big circle and pass around a plastic Viking helmet that we're holding on to the horns and passing it around. So, if you want to spread COVID, we got it, baby. And so you might imagine that we've had to make some big adjustments in the last few weeks. We could see what was coming. We were watching China. We were watching Italy in particular, and in February we knew this was going to hit, and so we started sending whole teams home for day-long experiments to see how we could do the remote working thing. March 13th, I probably am one of the last people who have been on a business flight. James and I are returning from a sales call, and my co-founder James Goebel and I were returning from a sales call in San Diego. Literally, as we were boarding the plane, the president was up on the monitors declaring a national emergency. We were holding our hands together in prayer that he wasn't going to cancel all domestic flights, because it would have been a long walk home from San Diego, because we were sure all the rental cars would be gone in an instant. But obviously they didn't. We got home, and that Monday we gathered the team together and set out 4 priorities. This was Monday, March 16th, and we said, number 1 priority is health and safety of the team. Number 2 is preservation of the business. We knew there was going to be a hit to the business. And number 3 was we will, beyond the billable work that we had and that we hoped would continue, we would staff prudent sales and marketing activities and obviously basic business operations. And then we actually cut the rates for everybody on the team. The owners went to 0 because we said the preservation of the business piece is cash. And much like Ed was describing, we were in a good cash position and we wanted to stay there. We told people that beyond the billable work we had, we would start cutting back hours, and for some members of the team that would go back to 0 hours. And what we told them at the time, even though we didn't know about CARES Act or PPP or increase in unemployment, because those programs hadn't kicked in yet or even been talked about yet, we said this problem is way too big for Menlo to solve on its own. There's going to have to be government intervention, and it'll come in some form we don't know, but we are certainly not the only one affected by this. By Tuesday of that week, 17th, we just told people, if you're uncomfortable coming in, grab what you need. Those experiments we'd run in February gave us a good sense of what it meant to work from home. And so about 2/3 of the team went home at that point. So we were kind of a hybrid model now, about 1/3 in the office, 2/3 at home. And then I think it was by Friday of that week, the governor issued the first stay-at-home order. And then we were 100% remote, and we have been ever since. And the way I describe it is it's weird for us, but it's working. We had been remote pairing with our clients and one of our team members continuously for the last 7 years. So technologically pairing with people, two computers in 2 different locations, but sharing the work together had been working for 7 years. So we knew how to do that. We had just never done it at the scale we're doing it now. And the good news is we've even learned how to close new deals in this remote only, don't get on airplanes, don't shake people's hands, just communicate like this. And that's been working too. We don't have enough business to sustain the current staff we have. Fortunately, and I want to call out our great friends at Bank of Ann Arbor. They were so incredibly helpful and responsive to helping us get our PPP loan. We applied the day the program opened. We were probably one of the first ones to receive it. It's been incredibly helpful. It allowed us to bring everyone back full-time, full rates for certainly the 8-week period of the loan itself, and probably some amount of time afterwards. Our presumption, our planning presumption, is that the government created that 8-week program because they thought we'd be in the clear after 8 weeks, and so that's why they needed it to be 8 weeks. But we're not assuming any other programs are going to kick in, so we're planning appropriately for what does post PPP loan look like. We just yesterday with the team, we started a lunch with Rich and James every Thursday where the team can just ask us questions virtually. It looks a lot like what we're doing right now. And we told them yesterday that the rallying cry for Menlo right now is survive, adapt, and then get back to thriving. And there'll be an offense component, which is really turn up the proactive sales component and figure out how to take that virtual or that experience piece where thousands of people would come and visit us, turn that into a virtual piece. We're watching what our friends at Zing Train are doing and others, and we're seeing some hopeful signs that you can actually make effective online offerings like that. And then the defensive piece is watching cash flow, doing weekly financial reviews, and making sure that we're very, very careful with our cash because we're not assuming that any of this turns around quickly.
What are you assuming, Rich? How are you planning for this?
Well, I'm sure like everybody else, you're keeping your ear to the ground. You're seeing what's happening. We had a wonderfully new big worldwide project that started with one of the big automotive companies. So I'll leave them unnamed for the moment. And that obviously stopped when everybody there went home. And then it's just starting back up again now. It was a 3-phase project, and each phase got more and more expensive for them and more lucrative for us. And they came back to us and said, oh, by the way, cancel phases 2 and 3, and the completion of phase 1 that you're really close on, you have 12 billable hours left on the statement of work. Could you cut that back to 10 billable hours? Okay, so this is a Fortune 5 company telling us they want to cut about, $350 out of a project. One of our team members, her husband works for the U, and the printer they have at their home that he uses for work at the U ran out of toner, and the U told him, you cannot buy another cartridge for that printer unless it is absolutely essential for your research. So you can see this pattern, and you hear it from Ed at Bivouac, this is going to have this ripple effect through the supply chain. So our assumption right now is post PPP, we're going to see, if you think you saw unemployment jump in the last 8 weeks, just wait. I think it's going to be tremendous.
Ed mentioned to me a figure. Ed, you can comment on this and talk about the impact, Rich. When you have people coming through, Ed has people coming through for football. What did you say, Ed, that people, the economy does in Ann Arbor for football games?
$95 million are brought into the community for the 7 football games.
Wow.
And then there's art fair and all those other things that happen, right?
Don't remind me.
Yeah.
And Rich, I think your story is an interesting one. I'm going to pass it on to my son, who's an editor at the Times, and maybe designing a perfect COVID spreading environment might be a good lead story. If you want it.
Please don't do that. Yeah, I won't answer the phone. If I see Pasick in the caller ID, I'm not going to answer.
We're going to go to another business now that people might pass and see, but don't know really much about, and that's Randall Faber. Randy, you there?
I'm here.
Yeah. So Randy, can you tell us a little bit about Faber Piano, Adventure Pianos, and what you guys do and how you've been impacted by this?
Sure. We're locally, we're the Faber Piano Institute, but that's kind of the tip of the iceberg for us. That's about 1% of our business. We're incorporated in Tennessee, and we do business as Faber Piano Adventures, Inc. Piano Adventures is our brand for piano method. My wife, Nancy, is a composer. I'm a pianist. And as educators, we've developed and written and published, first with a publisher, which we then later acquired. So we're running the whole publishing operations now. But we've got the top selling piano method in the world. So we're in 10 languages. We work with some affiliate publishers, usually the #1 publisher in music in each country, from Italy, Germany, to Japan, to Taiwan, to communist China. So we've got a lot of affiliates that we work with, and we work with a major distributor in the US so that we don't have to handle the high-lows. We do our own contracting with the printing. We use about 4 print houses around the world, maybe 6 if we go with a global. And so we coordinate that, and we buy paper from Portugal, ship it to various printers, and then we let them ship it by train then to common warehouses. So we control a bit of that pipeline, but we are built on the model that we control our intellectual property, we control the brand, and we control our primary marketing. And then we contract out all sales, all fulfillment, all distribution, so that we can keep a very sharp, small staff and leading from the top. So that's what our business is about, is piano education. And when this hit, the issues for us, first of all, is can we move books? You know, we knew people would buy them because everybody wants to play piano when they're locked at home. So we actually had some market opportunity there if we could tap it. But the question was, Amazon began shipping all medical supplies and put a hold on non-essentials. So we figured our online sales would continue, but they're actually drying up from Amazon initially. Fortunately, our primary North American distributor, and in Europe as well, in the UK, they were all able to get essential business certification from the government because we are educational. And also since they sell other textbooks for music programs, and that saved the day. It turns out that we were only down 10% in the first month. So we don't know how long that will continue. It depends on whether private piano lessons come back or not. If they don't come back in the fall, we could have a cash flow crunch. But how do we adapt then? You know, we went immediately pulling from some systems that we were establishing. And I just was so thankful that we had 2 things going on. We had been building some cash reserves. So we were in pretty good shape on the immediate cash flow. We had also just doubled our credit line just months prior. So we have strong credit line that we haven't tapped into at all for a couple of years. And immediately put in another cash loan for another $1 million just to hold extra capital so that we could be expanding into the digital space, which we felt was our new opportunities. But we had over the past couple of years put quite an amount of money into digital platforms that could provide services for both the students and the teachers. And an immense amount of planning that we had going was always looking at optimizing and exploiting the digital communications to enhance what our business primarily is as print publications. So we've always seen that merger with the digital being a support for the primary method. And so when the pandemic hit, we'd already had what I always called a digital flywheel. We've got a business engine system for the mainstream engine that generates the money, but we have what I call a digital flywheel, which is another smaller team that's completely digital, working on another set of plans that we could put in sync with the primary business. So what we did is we shifted resources to the digital team, and we put them in a more leadership role, syncing in with the primary team. And with that, we put as our number one priority the customer care, so the care for the teachers, because it's a multi-level business in that we sell our product through music dealers. So there's 1,000 North American storefronts basically that sell our material, and they're sold on recommendation of the teachers. So the teachers recommend to the students who buy from the dealer. So it's a kind of a multi-channel intermediated system. And we knew we had to disintermediate it, but we wanted to do it in a way we weren't undercutting the livelihoods of these partners. And so that was a bit of a difficult road. So we put out immediately a set of webinars that were offering psychological support to the teachers using musical metaphors. I picked up Beethoven's 250th birthday year. So we did a Beethoven in Isolation 5-part webinar series where I performed and analyzed a Beethoven piece and made the metaphor of Beethoven in isolation with his deafness, and we're in lockdown. And we initiated that with our first week of lockdown. And so it was a way of reaching out to teachers, saying music is relevant, both concretely and metaphorically, and we're here to support you. And then we ramped up some customer care areas where we could support the teachers, selling them direct, but also giving them contacts so they could go right to any dealer who was selling. We had systems to bypass Amazon for the time being. Amazon since came around and is placing huge orders. So that's been
Randy, that sounds like a very innovative approach to utilize the deafness. I love that. That's a really creative.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
approach.
the kind of use of metaphor has been really helpful for us because, of course, you imagine in our music community that all the webinars, everybody's doing everything in online teaching. And we didn't ignore that. In fact, in about 45 minutes, I'm online with a panel for online teaching with the Royal Conservatory webinar. But what we wanted to do was take a different tack that was more personal to the teachers, because a lot of them were really disturbed about not being able to contact with their students well. And so we wanted to pick it up, as you were noted there, Rob, is the kind of more the psychological elements and more of something closer to home for the teachers. And that Beethoven model worked well.
Great. Well, I wonder whether Beethoven learned on Zoom in his day. What was the analog? Randy, I'm going to switch. Just looking at the time, we're going to go to small groups through Google Groups here, through Zoom groups. Google is one of my clients, so I'm trying to promote them, but Zoom is easier to use. They don't have. So Emily Freund is going to put us into small groups of 3 each. And we're going to be able to talk about this, what the speakers have to say. Maybe you could just take the first minute of we're going to do 6 minutes. And if you take the first minute, just introduce yourself and then share. And then we're going to come back and we're going to post questions again online. You could look at the questions. There's several for each of the speakers at this point, but I hope you could all stay online. And Emily's going to start that process shortly. So let's go to right. So raise your thumb if you met a new friend on this. right. So we're going to go to some, we can maybe look at the chats, and there's questions for a number of people. Colleen asked a question for Kathy and Bill. What steps did you take to arrive at the decision to shift your online ordering model? Was there a particular event or incident that precipitated the shift?
Well, probably customer requests starting to come in much more than the first incident where someone came in and said, I have to have home delivery. That just started increasing where people continually requested it. And then we thought, well, we have this small platform, let's crank it up, let's flex it. So getting 800 plus items online was an exercise, but it was really customer requests, and actually staff was embracing it because we've got a lot of young staff and they really wanted to get involved in the IT part of it.
And I'll also say a big drive though is also the farmers.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that I'd say like if we were wavering at all, like we were certain that the farmers market would stay open because that's like an essential service. You're buying food. And then when they decided that it was not safe to keep the farmers market open, we realized like we were it. And, you know, we're a kind of a break-even operation and we pay out 75% of sales to the farms. And they were coming to us each week saying, what can we do? Can you guys help? What can you do? So I feel like we were getting encouraged kind of from multiple angles to just embrace wherever this thing was going to go.
And if you think about the timing, this was exactly the time that the farmers start cranking it up at the market, right? They've been growing for the market to open. They want to open with a bang. It's an important part of their outlet. And to have the concept that the farmers market might not be available to them was frightening. And so we just kind of said, we met with the farmers market manager and said, we think we can do this. And we did. It was really from all directions.
Wow. And we have one specific question for you guys. What made you decide to get those exotic mushrooms?
Well, because when you see them, you want to eat them. So we have all these really awesome mushrooms. Now they can cultivate a whole bunch of different kinds of mushrooms. In addition to the forage mushrooms, like morel season is, we think, just about over. But yeah, those mushrooms are gorgeous.
Yep.
Yeah.
From Detroit Mushroom Company. So this is a group that is, decided that they want to provide alternatives to just those brown button mushrooms, and they grow really interesting, beautiful mushrooms.
In South Lyon, so
yeah.
really close to us.
So let's say I want to order those mushrooms. What do we do? What do I do when I close up here?
You just go to our website,
Which
Yeah.
is
www.argusfarmstop.com, and hit the order food button.
It's a grocery. It brings you to our online store. And then I guess what's different is, we really are a farmer's market. We have 100 farms and producers bringing stuff every week. And they bring them in small quantities. And so it's a matter of looking to see what's in the store that day. But they generally bring 2 or 3 days worth of supply. And a week from now, like this week, we have lots of asparagus. Like there's things that are in season that the farms are cranking. Kathy mentioned we had some morel mushrooms last week, but
We just got zucchinis and cucumbers yesterday, but you can also go into the Liberty store and just, Dave, you know this, Dave Gregorka's on here. You just go into Liberty store and shop as well. And I saw the display yesterday that was beautiful of mushrooms. So, online or in Liberty.
Dave is an amazing guy because he can eat all the zucchini that he wants and he never gains any weight. I don't know how he does it. So there's another question for Rich about the close touch, how that's moving to try to change your model to enable people to, you started to talk a bit about that. How does that transfer if people are working on the computer versus working right next to each other, Rich?
It's like, I'm not muted. Okay. We've always focused a lot on our culture and we get a lot of attention for the culture we built. And I have just discovered how important culture is. When you do this kind of shift as quickly as you do, you are going to rest this new building we've built on the basis of a foundation of a really powerful culture. And so the shift to a remote online version of Menlo probably wasn't as unnerving or as shocking as you might guess. Part of it was we'd been doing remote pairing to people, sharing a task, using video, audio, and screen share. We've been doing that for 7 years, so it wasn't that unusual for us to do it. It was just unusual that we would do it at the scale of the entire organization. We still have our daily stand-up meeting. It's a Zoom meeting. We figured out how to pass the token along inside of a Zoom meeting. We recorded the dartboard going off, so we actually kicked off the Zoom meeting with dartboard. Our team's gotten very clever with Zoom backgrounds, so we have a good laugh every morning with each other about the different Zoom backgrounds they use.
Great.
And then the team still realized that they weren't getting enough contact with James and I because we sit out in the room with everybody else, and they weren't seeing us anymore. So that's when we started up just a couple of Thursdays ago. This Thursday lunch with Rich and James. Nothing organized or planned. It's just simply, hey, let's get together for lunch. Let's just talk about the questions you have, the concerns you have, that sort of thing.
You're not using the buffet bar when you have the lunch, though?
Well, we are, but it's a virtual buffet bar. It's 0 calories, which is awesome. Not very filling, though.
I wanted to ask Ed a question. Ed, your son is now working in the business, and I wonder if you could comment on generational differences about how you're thinking about this situation. You also work with a lot of youngsters are in your employ and people that are customers. So do you see any generational differences about how you and your son are thinking about this? Do we still have Ed out there? Okay. Ed, I don't see you anymore. We're going to go to a question for Randy. Randy, you're the most international of the companies. How do you feel like this is, a lot of your relationships are with China. What's happening with your relationships with China?
So far, so good. We've been a little more out of touch than usual. We have had typically 2 employees on the ground in China, usually in Beijing. More recently, they've shifted a little remote from Beijing. Our publisher's People's Music of China. So, we cover a lot of ground in China, but our central contacts are the Beijing area. And we had, I came out of China. I was judging an international piano competition there at the end of January and came out just days before the lockdown. And we had our employees actually in America that summer. At that same months, and they got locked out from going back to China. So it was a little bit bizarre. When that travel opened up, they flew back to China and were in quarantine for 2 weeks in China with their 2 babies. So that was kind of a wild time. But we're accustomed to working remotely. However, we tend to use different mediators in there who can talk the language and talk with our team. So, just yesterday, I got a very nice note from the editor-in-chief of just wishing, personally good wishes. We're worried a little bit about the backlash against China because we have a big series that we've just launched. We're launching in America. We launched it with big fanfare in China, a 6-volume series called Music from China that we co-published with the for all practical purposes with the Communist Party. It was involved with the Ministry of Propaganda, which controls the whole publishing in China, of which we're in a chain. So the idea, they were so grateful to us and did the media events in China because it was the first time the kids could, and learning piano, wouldn't learn just Western music, but they could learn at graded levels of authentic Chinese material also. So we had big fanfare there, and then we had promised to launch that elsewhere around the world. And we just finished it and we're ready to launch. And we had a big media event planned at a national convention in Chicago in March, where we had VIPs coming in from China and elsewhere through Asia for this launch. And we realized shortly it was going to be a kind of a COVID reception if we went through with it. And pretty soon, so we decided then to cancel. We were anticipating, and eventually the whole conference canceled.
Now,
So
that's going to be one of the things that's just changing in your business. You're not going to have the recitals and the conventions and all
yeah,
the things that you depended on.
yeah. So
I'm
we
going to
can see
open
how
things
that.
up to. I'm going to open things up to other people who want to comment, either the speakers or anybody else that wants to unmute themselves and ask a question or make a comment about something they want to share. So we'll spend the last few minutes with an open forum here.
So Ed, this is
Can
Jan.
you say who
Davies.
you are speaking?
Yes, this is Jan Davies McDermott. I'm the owner at Davies House Inn in Ann Arbor. I was a little concerned when Ed flatly and definitively said that there will be no football. As you might guess, being an
Well-
innkeeper in Ann Arbor, it frightened me a little bit. We are obviously very dependent on things like the summer festival and the art fair and football and graduation, and all of those things have gone by the wayside except football. So we're sort of pinning our hope on there being some return to tourism. But one of the
And
things—
can you comment on that?
Yes, I mean, that certainly there's no definitive decision, but I do know from contacts at the athletic department, there will be football of some kind, but there won't be the tourism. It might be open to students and families of players, and the games will be broadcast. But football, as we know it, that brings in 100,000 tourists, I am convinced will not happen this season.
and I hope you're wrong.
So do I.
I've also heard this from the players that they're concerned about playing because there's a lot of getting up in your face and spitting, and there's actually worry about the players that could they play and it be safe. So of course they're already wearing face masks, but I don't think it's the right type. So. Ed, there's also a question for you about the intergenerational thing. Do you notice any difference between folks like us who are baby boomers and your son and their generation in terms of how they're thinking about this?
No, I mean, my son is perplexed as I am. You had asked the question before when we were kind of cut off. And certainly working with your son has its issues. I think sometimes he has trouble seeing me as a co-owner as opposed to a father. So there's those issues that come up, and we work through it. It's not easy, but it's part of working with your son.
Okay.
But he brings a lot to the table. Again, we sell clothing to students. His age is much closer than mine to the customers. So it's invaluable to have him.
All right. Any other comments, questions?
Rob, I got a question from Kathy about, am I working on another book right now? And not yet, although there are a couple of rumbling around in my head. But I am writing quite a bit about our experiences right now. And I think that we're seeing a lot of attention on our website for those. You can just go to our website and click the stories link on our homepage and see some of the stories that are coming out of this time. I think it is important for all of us, as we're doing here, to continually share what we're learning with one another, because if there is ever a time for learning, adapting, and so on, I think this is it. I'm with Jan that the prospect of not being able to sit in my season ticket seats at University of Michigan Stadium it's mind-boggling to me. I'm sure all of us in Ann Arbor are thinking, well, I don't want us to break that streak of 100,000 people in the stadium, but I also, similarly, it's May, and I can't imagine that 5 months from now anybody's going to think it's a good idea to put 100,000 people shoulder to shoulder in a stadium. It just doesn't make sense. So we're all going to be adapting. There's going to be a time, I don't know, I'm sure all of us remember all the stories our parents told us about the Depression, and we're like, wow, that'll never happen again. So we don't need to listen to those stories. Boy, do we need those stories now.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I would say keep sharing.
I have one thing. We're talking about books. I took this opportunity with my friend Mike Anleitner to publish a book that we'd been working on for about 5 years and really hadn't had the time. So when this whole situation broke, I'm pretty much an opportunistic guy. And I said, well, let's finish the book. So the book is now published on Amazon, and it's called Tech Leadership 4.0. Tech Leadership 4.0, and I'm trying to get 100 reviews of this book. So if you would mind downloading it for 99 cents and take a look at it and just write a review, that would be great. It doesn't have to be necessarily a positive review, but just something that comments on it. And Amazon's algorithms look at reviews, just a number of reviews to promote the book. So, and then we're also really thinking it's a great book for anybody who's in a tech leadership position. I know some of you are out there and leading tech companies. And Doug, are you there? Is Doug still online? I don't see him, but I know he runs a software company, and there's other people that do that. And the book is written by myself and Mike, who is a software and a technical engineer. So it's coming from his point of view as well. So thank you if you could promote that. Any other questions, comments, prognostications?
Hi.
Doug,
Yeah.
there you are. Doug Lyon, can you comment on how things are going in your software industry? Can't hear you, Doug. Can you unmute? Okay, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, we've.
Doug's in Ohio, or we could.
Yeah, we're just over the Michigan-Ohio line. We're in Sylvania, and we've got. As of I think the 12th of March, we got together and decided to work from home. There's 15 or 16 of us, and so that's what we've been doing ever since. It's kind of fortunate that, we develop software, and we take care of our users. There's 2,100 hospitals around the country that subscribe to our software. So customer support is, 3 people, 4 people, depending on how you count it. A third of our group are programmers, and so right there you've got more than half of our staff that has an easy time actually working from home. I was telling our breakout group that there were over the years, the programmers have been bugging me about, hey, Doug, can we work at home? And I've been saying no. And now the table is completely turned. They're probably loving it. So basically, it's been not as horrible for us yet. That's kind of how it wasn't very difficult for us really to segue into working from home.
Very glad to hear it. So we're going to do a wrap up. Anybody have either any needs that they want to address the group? I see something posted on here about Marcy Waldinger helping with the election coming up, getting ballots out. Any needs or people want to share any resources that are out there? This is a good time to do that as we wrap up.
Rob, Sara Eggleston here. I just think it's interesting. I've spent years trying to accommodate people with disabilities, and a remote working solution has always been a good one. And now, and there's been resistance to this from many employers. It's wonderful to see that this is now something that is norm and really will help our disabled community. Just a thought.
Good thought. Thank you.
Yeah, and Rob, I'm going to say one more thing about having time on my hands as a result of no guests. And that is that we took the opportunity to collaborate with Simply Scrumptious Catering and Athena Foundation to host a fundraiser. We did a Mother's Day sale and we did a Memorial Day sale of geraniums that we collaborated with Turner's Greenhouses. They were closed, so it benefited them that we could buy their product. Simply Scrumptious is doing home delivery, so it benefited them for home delivery of their freshly made foods each day, especially for Mother's Day brunch. It benefited the Athena Foundation as well. And now we are collaborating with the Michigan Theater to show a film about women's leadership and present our Athena Awards. And it will be a collaboration that benefits the Michigan Theater for their work, Simply Scrumptious, which will deliver a prosecco and appetizers to the people who buy a ticket to watch the film and watch the awards. So even in a crisis, there's a way to help nonprofit organizations. And I think pivoting and thinking out of the box makes it a whole lot more fun when you have time on your hands.
Norm Herbert, can you hear me, Norm? Can you comment? Norm's been involved a lot in the nonprofit world over the last 20 years. Norm, can you just comment on what some of the things you're seeing that nonprofit leaders are struggling with?
Well, one of the things that I shared in our small breakout group was the comments that Rich and Ed, Randall, and Kathy and Bill made with regard to the importance of cash. And so many organizations, in particular in the nonprofit, haven't really built up that operating reserve that we talk about from a funding perspective. Funders are looking for 3 to 6 months of operating budget as a cash reserve. So I'm particularly interested in the good planning that's been done. Also concerned about the lack of needed operating reserves on the part of small businesses to survive a situation like this. Particularly appreciative of the opportunity to share. The sharing that's been done with us, I think, is really very helpful. We don't go through this alone. We're together, and we're going to solve many of these challenges.
I just want to wrap up with a remembrance of those that we have lost, and it's very hard to get a grip about this. Somebody pointed out that if you look at the full Michigan stadium and on a busy Saturday with Ohio State, and you look at the number of people, that's about the number of people we've lost so far in this country. So it's a pretty graphic way to think about it. I also want to encourage people to listen to today's daily from the New York Times and to look at last week's Sunday New York Times front page, which had in the front section 1,000 of the people who died, which is just 1%. But they had 2-line bios about those people, 2-line obituaries. And it's a time to reflect. And one of the ways that I'm asking people to reflect, I'm doing on LinkedIn now 90 days to increase self-awareness. And one of the questions I asked is, imagine your passing, whether it's a crisis like this or hopefully 50 years from now from old age. What do you want your 2-line obituary to say? And what would be most important to remember, to have you be remembered? And this is a time to live in purpose, a time to really think about what matters and put our attention to that. So I just want to finish with that appeal to people to be reflective, to be kind, to be respectful to those that are suffering much more than we, and those that can't protect themselves from this disease as the middle class can. So peace to all of you. I'd like to try to particularly get the small business owners together on a call at one point where we just have small business people talking to one another. I think that's really important to share these these resources. So we'll be back with you next week. If you have ideas for additional programs, for example, maybe we should do something just for the nonprofit community, please email me or just put a chat note here about what you think a good program would be. I'm trying to invent these each week as we go along. Thank you very much.
Bye,
Thanks, Rob.
Rob. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob.